look at the sheer, unbridled power of a U.S. Navy carrier strike group. Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, massive aircraft carriers, and the most advanced radar systems on the planet. To the naked eye, they look invincible, like gods of the sea. But here's the question that keeps naval planners awake at night. Does an Iranian cruise missile actually need to hit the steel hull of that ship to defeat it? Can you turn a billion-dollar war machine into a useless floating pile of scrap metal without ever scratching its paint? Well, the answer lies in a concept that most people overlook. It's called the logistics umbilical cord. You see, a warship is only a warship as long as it has fuel for its engines and missiles for its launchers. Without them, even the most advanced destroyer is nothing more than an exceptionally expensive floating hotel. While the ships themselves can maneuver and hide, their lifeblood comes from places that cannot. We are talking about massive, static installations like Al-Udeid Air Base in Qatar or the naval support activity in Bahrain. These aren't just buildings. They are the lungs of the entire regional operation. But there's a problem. These bases are massive, fixed targets sitting comfortably within the reach of a sustained, long-range onslaught of Iranian ballistic fire. We often get distracted by the glitz and the fire of high-tech weaponry on the front lines. But today, we are going to look beneath the surface. We are going to expose the naked, gritty truth of logistics. Because if the blood stops flowing, the giant dies. For righteous. To understand the sheer magnitude of what the US is protecting, we have to look at the heart of the machine. First, there is Al-Udeid Air Base in Qatar. It is not just a base, it is a sprawling, sun-scorched fortress in the middle of the desert, serving as the primary nerve center for all American air operations in the Middle East. It hosts over 8,000 military personnel and features a massive 12,500-foot runway that literally never sleeps. This is a logistics titan. Imagine millions of gallons of JP-8 jet fuel stored in hardened, interconnected underground tanks. Think about thousands of tons of precision-guided munitions stacked in specialized, climate-controlled bunkers. Everything the U.S. Air Force needs to dominate the regional airspace starts here. Then, look at the naval support activity in Bahrain. This is the only permanent U.S. naval shore base in the region and the home of the legendary U.S. Fifth Fleet. It features state-of-the-art port facilities capable of docking a 100,000-ton aircraft carrier. It is a masterpiece of American engineering and global reach. You cannot help but admire the sheer audacity of this infrastructure. It is the physical manifestation of a superpower's will. But how do you protect these crown jewels from a direct, high-intensity assault? The U.S. doesn't leave them vulnerable. They are shielded by a multi-layered canopy of the most advanced defense technology ever devised. On the ground, you have the Patriot Advanced Capability 3, or PAC-3. These batteries are designed for one specific task: high-speed terminal phase interception. They use hit-to-kill technology. They don't just explode near a target, they physically slam into it with pure kinetic energy, pulverizing the incoming threat. Then, there is THAAD, the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System. It carries a massive ANTPY-2 radar that can peer deep into enemy territory, tracking threats even in the vacuum of space. It is a clinical application of physics and computer science. The U.S. Navy also deploys Aegis ashore, utilizing the same sophisticated sensors and fire control logic found on their elite destroyers. It is an interlocking shield of steel and silicon. It feels impenetrable. It feels like a safe bet. But wait, there is a silent, massive escalation happening just across the Gulf. Iran isn't just watching these bases. They have spent the last 4 decades building the largest and most diverse ballistic missile arsenal in the entire Middle East. They aren't looking to match the US in high-tech sensors. They are looking to win with geography and overwhelming numbers. Meet the Fatah 110. It is a short-range, road-mobile ballistic missile. It is fast, highly accurate, and can be launched from the back of a truck hidden deep within a mountain cave. Then, there is the Qiyam-1, a liquid-fueled missile designed specifically to target regional logistical hubs. Iran has thousands of these. They are cheap to produce, they are mass-manufactured, and they are ready to fire at a moment's notice. This is where the logic begins to fail. Here is the cold, hard reality of naval warfare versus base defense. A ship is a moving target. A destroyer can sail at 30 knots, can dodge, and it can disappear into the vastness of the ocean. But Al-Udeid, it is a static target. It is a fixed coordinate on a map. It has been sitting in the exact same spot for decades. Iranian military planners don't need to find the target. They already have the GPS coordinates of every fuel tank, every ammunition bunker, and every command center locked into their guidance systems. This effectively turns the entire Persian Gulf into a pre-calculated kill zone. Now imagine the moment the horizon lights up. This is a synchronized, multi-domain onslaught. Iran doesn't just fire one or two missiles to probe the defenses. They unleash a textbook saturation attack strategy. They fire dozens, then they fire hundreds. The goal is simple but deadly: overload the system. Every Patriot battery has a physical limit. Every THAAD radar has a maximum number of targets it can track and engage simultaneously. The Iranian strategy is to throw more metal into the sky than the American computers can process. They want to force the US commanders to make impossible choices: which missiles to stop and which ones to let through. Inside the command centers at Al-Udeid and NSA Bahrain, the atmosphere turns from calm to chaotic in seconds. The radar screens are saturated with incoming blips, moving at hypersonic speeds. The Aegis systems go to work, and the launchers fire interceptor after interceptor. You hear the deafening roar of missiles leaving the tubes every few seconds. It is a race against time and a race against physics. But there is a catch. Every interceptor fired is one less in the magazine, and reloading takes hours, not minutes. Every successful hit is a win, but every single miss is a catastrophe. If even 10% of those Iranian missiles slip through the defensive net, the impact is devastating. They aren't just aiming for buildings. They are aiming for the lungs of the fleet. They are aiming for the fuel that moves the ships and the ammo that feeds the guns. This is the moment the admiration for the machine meets the terror of reality. The system is galled. The pressure is unsustainable. This is the point where the invincible shield begins to crack under the weight of pure, unadulterated numbers. Because when you are a static target, the math is always working against you. And in a saturation attack, the house usually wins. So, how does this empire of logistics survive when its very heart is under constant, overwhelming fire? To find out, we have to look closer at the specific points of failure. We have to find the Achilles heel. So, how do you actually defeat an empire that outspends the next 10 nations combined? You don't aim for the armor. You aim for the veins. To bring down a giant, you don't need to punch its face. You just need to cut its hamstrings. Let's decode the 6 Achilles heels of the American military machine in the Persian Gulf. This is the reality of asymmetric warfare, where the blood matters more than the bone. First, let's talk about Tactic 1, runway fragility. An F-35 Lightning II costs roughly $100 million. It is the most advanced piece of aviation hardware ever built, a masterpiece of stealth and sensors. But here is the catch that naval planners don't like to talk about. It is entirely dependent on a perfectly flat, debris-free strip of asphalt. Iran knows this better than anyone. They don't need to engage in a high-tech dogfight or bypass American stealth. They just need to land a few missiles equipped with submunitions. Think of these as thousands of tiny, high-explosive grenades packed into a single warhead. When they explode, they don't just destroy the runway, they turn it into a lunar landscape of craters. Even if the craters are small, they create what pilots call FOD, foreign object debris. A single pebble sucked into a jet engine can cause a catastrophic failure. In minutes, those $100 million jets aren't stealth killers anymore. They are just very expensive paperweights trapped in the desert sun. Because if the wheels don't leave the ground, the war is already over before it even started. Moving to Tactic 2, the fuel depot paradox. Logistics is a thirsty business. A carrier strike group is essentially a massive machine that converts jet fuel into power. They consume hundreds of thousands of gallons of JP-8 jet fuel every single day just to keep the planes in the air and the ships moving. This fuel isn't produced at sea. It's stored in massive above-ground tank farms at installations like Bahrain. These tanks are the softest targets imaginable. They are essentially giant, unarmored balloons filled with millions of gallons of explosive liquid. A single well-placed drone strike or a cruise missile triggers a massive chain reaction, a literal sea of fire that can burn for weeks. Without JP-8, the engines go cold, the radars go dark, the fleet is dead in the water. You haven't sunk a single ship, but you've effectively deleted the US presence from the map. It is the clinical application of surgical fire to a massive, flammable target. Next, the logistics choke points. This is about the geography of power. An aircraft carrier is a massive beast. It can't just dock anywhere. It needs deep water piers and specialized heavy lift cranes to reload its vertical launch systems, or VLS. This is the secret. While a destroyer can fire missiles at sea, it is extremely difficult and dangerous to reload those missile tubes while bobbing in the waves. They almost always need a stable, land-based pier. These piers are the only places where the Navy can replenish its magazines after a saturation attack. Iran destroys these specific, specialized piers at NSA Bahrain, the Navy loses its ability to reload. Imagine a billion-dollar destroyer that has fired all its interceptors during the first wave of an attack. It is now defenseless. It can't fight, and it can't refuel its weapons. It's forced to retreat thousands of miles just to get back in the game. By hitting the pier, you've neutralized the weapon without ever touching the ship. Let's look at the science. Tactic 4, the PSI impact. Modern missiles don't need to punch a hole in a hardened bunker to win. They use proximity fuses. These are sensors that tell the missile to detonate exactly 50 feet above the target. Why? Because of overpressure. When thousands of pounds of high explosives detonate in the air, they create a massive shockwave measured in pounds per square inch, or PSI. While a concrete bunker might hold up, the sensitive gear on top won't. The radar dishes, the satellite uplinks, the communication towers, they are shredded by the blast and fragmentation. You've effectively blinded the fleet. You've cut the nerves. And in modern warfare, if you can't see, you're already dead. It is a clinical, technical way to render a superpower deaf, dumb, and blind. Then, there is the psychological threat. Nowhere to call home. War is as much about the mind as it is about the machine. Imagine you are a sailor on a destroyer. You've been at sea for months. Your only link to safety, your only hope for a hot meal and a safe night's sleep is your home port. But then you see the satellite imagery. Your base is in flames. The docks are gone. The fuel is burning. The psychological impact is devastating. It creates a sense of profound, terrifying isolation. You realize you are operating in a giant trap with no safe harbor to retreat to. Morale isn't just a feeling. It is a tactical requirement. When you take away the home port, you take away the will to fight. You turn an elite force into a group of survivors just looking for an exit. Finally, the ultimate twist, the attrition war. This is the strategy of the long game. Iran understands a truth that many in Washington choose to ignore. You don't need a total military victory to win. You don't need to sink the aircraft carrier. You just need to reach the 10% threshold. If Iran can achieve just a 10% impact on the US logistics chain, just a few runways, few fuel tanks, a few piers, the entire operation becomes unsustainable. The economic cost of staying in the Gulf spikes into the trillions. The political will at home starts to crumble under the weight of the bill. This is an attrition war designed to bleed the giant dry, one drop at a time. It effectively turns the US military's greatest strength, its global logistics, into its greatest liability. In this game, the empire doesn't fall because it was outmuscled. It falls because it ran out of blood. It's not about the fire, it's about the fuel. And when the fuel stops, the empire stops with it. This is the cold, hard logic of the kill zone. It's a textbook lesson in how the small can dismantle the great, not by matching their strength, but by exploiting their needs. Now look at the map again. Does that fleet still look invincible to you? Or does it look like a giant waiting for the first cut? Because in the Strait, the first cut is usually the deepest. For, in modern warfare, the winner is rarely the one with the sharpest sword. It is the one who successfully protects the hand holding it. We have spent decades and trillions of dollars perfecting the blade. We have built the most lethal carrier strike groups in human history. But we are now facing an unprecedented logistics paradox in the Persian Gulf. The very bases that allow the United States to project power are also its greatest tactical vulnerability. They are static, they are fixed, and they are sitting squarely in the crosshairs. These logistical hubs fall, it isn't just a military setback. It is a psychological and economic earthquake. The moment the fuel stops flowing at Al-Udeid or the piers collapse in Bahrain, the security of global trade routes vanishes instantly. The Strait of Hormuz would become a graveyard for commerce. Oil prices would spike to levels never seen before. Global markets would destabilize in a matter of hours. The ripple effect would be felt by every citizen and every business across the globe. This reality forces us to confront a chilling question. Is a superpower truly a superpower if its entire regional presence can be paralyzed by a few well-placed, low-cost missiles? Iran's strategy doesn't require a miracle. It doesn't even require sinking a massive aircraft carrier. It only requires making the cost of staying too high for any nation to pay. This is the new reality of the kill zone. It is a world where geography can defeat technology. It is a world where sheer numbers can overwhelm clinical precision. The machine is only as strong as its weakest link. And in the shallow, crowded waters of the Gulf, that link is being tested every single day. Power is not just about what you can destroy. It is about what you can sustain. And as it turns out, even the mightiest empire is only one logistical heartbeat away from total paralysis. Power is absolute, but it is also incredibly fragile.